try and experience for themselves. Now, Paul, you had the monumental job of experiencing as many of the 2012 commissions for music, 12-minute slots each. They've been played in various places all over the country, but for the first time they were all performed over the same weekend at the Southbank Centre. Let's just see 4 of them. So how was it for you?
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about wandering into spaces you never usually wander, and that, I guess, is the function of this as well, this kind of music, contemporary music. And of course, you know, I love music. And what's interesting about that is the idea that some of this contemporary music is going to be some of the most marginalised, you know, alleyways in the modern culture to an extent, because, you know, it's off in the distance, it's down unusual alleyways, and here's an opportunity for them to get some attention. And the fact is that within that, you kind of think, that there has to be 20 and they have to be 12 minutes each, and they have to, well, they didn't have to have a sporting theme, but everyone did do a sporting theme, so there's lots of lines on the stage, and there's lots of, you know, operas about Czech athletes from the early 1950s.
Was that a frame for people to kick against? It was quite good to have that brief.
Well, it's interesting, it worked in a number of ways, like the opera, Zatopek opera, in 12 minutes is a tremendous opera. And it gave us an opportunity to come across someone like Graham Fitkin, who is you know, one of the great composers in this country. No one will really know his name, and even though he's squashed into the 12 minutes and he's squashed into being one of the 20, you get a sighting of someone who does need more exposure, and to that extent, this was a real success. And people wandering off the streets, because a large amount of them were free. And that was very exciting, as people sit down and are suddenly coming across different forms of music, way outside the Gary Barlow end of things. And being excited, seeing different sorts of things, different levels of fantasy, different levels of noise, different ways of expressing themselves. And so even though the thing had that thing that I love music, but the relay, it's a marathon. I think this was a tremendous sort of example of how a focus over things that have been released over a year or two suddenly came into one place and really gave a meaning about other places to listen to that are usually covered up.
So instead of the idea about Olympics and the Cultural Olympia being about legacy in terms of monuments or works of art or whatever it may be that will last, I seem to get the impression from you all that in fact the strongest things are things that are experimental, that are only concerned mainly with now, and what happens to them in the future is not of any concern predominantly for the people who are making it.
It's a release of a new sort of energy, and it's interesting that it needs something like this to give access and space to the tremendous nature of what at the heart of this is one of the most central parts of our soul, which is experimentation. But the corporate world, of course, tries to undermine that because it's ideological, and they want to control that because that leads to the sort of freedom that really they would not like, and would all be complaining about the totalitarian logo.
Because surely the greatest legacy is a moment when your mind is open to something new. How could that be? You know, that is the thing.
And we share it.
And we share it.
I think it's the connections that people make, and dare I use the word inclusive, connections that people make.
We may even have agreement breaking out, and we're going to end now with a little bit of historical precedence too, because the arts in the Olympics have a long shared history. In fact,